Welcome to today's incredible restoration project. Right in front of us is an antique motorcycle that has been brutally battered by time and extreme weather. A thick layer of heavy, reddish-brown rust covers the entire body, transforming what was once a proud machine into a literal pile of scrap metal. But don't judge it just yet. It is time to wake up this sleeping beast. The first step in any restoration is always dismantling the exterior components. I begin by inspecting the drive chain, which is completely dried out and rusted solid, with the links practically fused together. Next, I move on to the heavily corroded seat. The retaining bolts are severely degraded, requiring me to carefully maneuver with pliers and a socket wrench to break them loose. Finally, the rotting seat is lifted off, clearing the path for the much more complex teardown procedures that lie ahead. Moving on to the heart of the motorcycle, the fuel tank. Using a screwdriver, I try to pry open the C's cap, revealing a surface entirely eaten away by aggressive rust. To detach the tank, I heavily spray penetrating oil onto the stubborn mounting bolts and fuel petcock. Lifting the tank off the frame, it feels incredibly heavy, filled with decades of internal decay. Now comes a crucial step, chemical rust removal. I submerge the entire tank into a custom transparent glass vat, filling it with water and a specialized rust-stripping solution. By introducing an electrical current, we initiate an electrolysis reaction. You can immediately see the intense bubbling action as the chemicals silently but aggressively strip away the stubborn layers of oxidation deep within the metal. Afterward, the softened rust is effortlessly scraped off, and the tank is thoroughly pressure washed to remove any remaining toxic residues. To fully eradicate the internal rust, I pour a mixture of sharp gravel and a potent rust remover directly into the tank, shaking it vigorously to scrub the inner walls. Pouring out the foul, murky liquid reveals a stunning before and after transformation. The inside is clean once again. Inspecting the exterior, I discover the bottom mounting points are structurally compromised. Instead of giving up, I take raw metal strips, cut them down with an angle grinder, and carefully bend them into shape using a vise. These newly fabricated brackets are then securely welded directly onto the damaged lower sections of the tank, restoring its structural integrity. Next, I pour a specialized degreaser over metal and use a blowtorch to flash burn away any microscopic oils or moisture. Finally, I pour a protective two-part epoxy coating inside, swirling it around to permanently seal the interior against future corrosion. With the structural repairs complete, it is time to perfect the exterior surface. I mix up a batch of automotive body filler and spread it smoothly over the uneven, pitted areas of the metal. Once fully cured, I meticulously sand it down by hand, blending the filler seamlessly with the bare steel until contour is absolutely flawless. A solid coat of gray primer is applied, followed by a stunning, deep two-part black gloss paint that shines just like a mirror. To truly bring the vintage spirit back to life, I carefully align and apply the classic retro tricolor striped decals in red, orange, and gold. With a final polish using a buffing pad, the iconic chrome Honda emblem is firmly pressed into place. The completed fuel tank now looks absolutely breathtaking, standing in stark contrast to the decaying, rusty show we started with just moments ago. Returning to the skeletal frame, I begin freeing up the front control area. Using a socket wrench, I carefully loosen the rusted bolts clamping the handlebar risers. The metal here is heavily oxidized and terribly discolored. To detach the bars completely, I have to cut through the brittle, decaying control cables with a pair of snips. Once removed, I take the filthy, rusted handlebar straight over to the bench grinder equipped with a dense polishing wheel. As the high-speed buffing wheel presses firmly against the metal, it aggressively strips away the ugly brown crust. Amazingly, the original chrome plating hidden beneath decades of neglect is still intact. In just a matter of moments, the dull pipe regains an astonishing, brilliant shine. I then move lower, snipping the remaining rusted wire ties to entirely remove the weathered headlight bucket assembly from the front of the motorcycle. The teardown continues at a rapid pace. I grab a large wrench to unscrew the main steering stem nut, then carefully unbolt the top triple tree clamps. With a bit of force, the entire front fork and shock assembly smoothly slides down and out of the main chassis. Transitioning down to the engine block, my next target is a heavily rusted exhaust pipe, which I completely seize to the cylinder head. After spraying a generous amount of penetrating fluid to break the rust bond, I use a wrench to loosen the flange nuts. A few careful, solid taps with a yellow rubber mallet help dislodge the stubborn header, allowing me to safely pull the exhaust pipe away. The engine is covered in decades of thick, dark grime and baked-on oil, but piece by piece, we are exposing the mechanical core, prepping it for a deep, specialized restoration. I focus my attention on the remaining rusted linkages around the engine block, spraying a foaming cleaner onto the heavily crusted rear brake pivot. I use a toothbrush to thoroughly scrub away the caked-on grease. With a pair of needle-nose pliers, I carefully extract a stubborn cotter pin, which allows me to fully detach and remove the rear brake rod. Next, I unbolt and pull away the completely rusted chain guard. Moving to the side of the engine, I meticulously dismantle the Kickstarter lever, the gear shifter, and both the left and right aluminum stator and clutch covers. The filthy carburetor is also detached and set aside. Finally, with all the mounting bolts removed, I pull the heavy, grease-covered engine block completely out of the frame. Every single component is now separated, evaluated, and neatly organized on the table, eagerly awaiting the intense deep cleaning process. To tackle the heavily soiled engine casings, I gather all the aluminum covers into a large plastic tub. I sprinkle a potent industrial chemical powder and pour boiling water over them. Instantly, an intense, foaming reaction erupts, boiling away decades of stubborn, baked-on grease and dirt. During inspection, I notice a large, damaging hole completely punched through the side covers. Instead of replacing it, I use a classic casting technique. I firmly embed the damaged cover into a tray of packed sand to hold it steady and absorb heat. Using a crucible and a high-heat blowtorch, I melt down a chunk of solid aluminum. I carefully pour the glowing, molten liquid metal directly into the hole. The hot aluminum fills the void perfectly, fusing tightly with the original casing, successfully bridging the gap and saving this vintage part from being thrown in the trash. Now, we focus on the finer details, starting with a severely rusted original hardware. Instead of buying new bolts, I restore them. I secure a bolt in the vise, filing the head down to bare, shiny steel. Using a high-heat blowtorch, I heat the metal until it's scorching, then immediately quench it in used oil. This classic blacksmithing technique creates a durable, black oxide coating that prevents future rust. Next, I move to the iconic circular Honda engine badges. After polishing the bare metal, I submerge them in a vibrant green solution, using electrolysis to deposit a brilliant, corrosion-resistant nickel layer. To finish the badge, I apply a custom stencil mask and carefully dab gold paint into the recessed lettering. I wipe away the excess, and the result is a stunning, factory-fresh emblem ready to be proudly mounted on the engine cover. We dive deep into the mechanical heart of the motorcycle. The internal engine components, including the crankshaft and transmission gears, are laid out on a wire rack and heavily sprayed with a specialized cleaning solvent. Using a firm toothbrush, I meticulously scrub away decades of baked-on sludge and metallic debris from every single gear tooth and bearing surface. The parts are then rinsed until they are completely spotless. Moving on to the cylinder jug, it is submerged into a chemical bath to dissolve the stubborn grime trapped deep between the cooling fins. A foaming agent vigorously boils away the remaining dirt. After a thorough rinse, I use a blowtorch to preheat the cast iron surface of the cylinder. This thermal preparation is essential before applying high-temperature engine paint, ensuring the block can handle the extreme heat of the running motor. Before finishing the engine components, I treat a few remaining threaded plugs. I pour fresh oil into a glass beaker, heat the metal plug with a blowtorch, and plunge it into the liquid for a protective quench. Now, you can see the fully reassembled engine block gleaming in its fresh silver paint, looking absolutely flawless. With the powerhouse done, I turn back to the heavily degraded rolling chassis. I begin by unbolting the rusted upper shock mounts and carefully removing the rear suspension. Then, using a socket wrench, I tackle the C's rear axle nut. With some effort, I pull the long axle completely out of the swing arm, which allows me to finally drop the filthy rear wheel. I also remove the rusty rear sprocket assembly, breaking down the back half of the motorcycle into its worn-out pieces. The wheels are in catastrophic condition. I take the filthy aluminum wheel hubs and strip them down to reveal pristine metal, giving them a heavy coat of brilliant silver paint. Now comes the intricate art of wheel lacing. I carefully thread new, gleaming spokes through the silver hub, connecting them to a beautiful, freshly chromed rim. Once trued, I stretch on a brand new classic tread tire and inflate it to optimal pressure. Meanwhile, I must dismantle the front end of the rusted frame. I unbolt the heavily corroded horn and front fork covers. Using a large wrench, I loosen the steering stem nut and drop the rusty front forks completely out of the chassis. The old, greasy ball bearings are pulled out, fully exposing the bare bones of the motorcycle and leaving the frame ready for stripping. Continuing with the chassis teardown, I attack the main swing arm pivot bolt. Using a pair of pliers, I pull the long, rusted shaft free, allowing me to detach the heavily corroded swing arm from the main body. The skeleton of the bike is now completely isolated. To prepare the frame for a fresh paint, I brush on a thick, aggressive chemical paint stripper. You can see the old black paint instantly bubble and blister as the chemical does its heavy lifting. After scrubbing the frame down to the bare metal, it is taken into the spray booth. I apply multiple thick, even coats of a deep, mirror-like gloss black finish to the frame and the front fender. The flawless, wet-looking paint completely transforms these parts, setting the perfect, elegant foundation for the entire reassembly phase. The moment every restorer dreams of has arrived. All the meticulously cleaned, painted, and polished components are beautifully laid out on the table, gleaming like a vintage mechanical puzzle. I start the rebuild at the very front, packing the steering stem with high-quality grease and carefully seating each tiny steel ball bearing. The freshly rebuilt silver front fork tubes are then smoothly slid through the neck and securely bolted down with the top triple clamp. Moving to the rear, I attach the glossy black swing arm to frame. Next, the brand new chrome-accented rear shock absorbers are bolted into place, giving the motorcycle its suspension back. I mount the shiny chrome handlebars and finally slide the newly laced front wheel into the forks. Watching the bare frame stand up and support its own weight is incredibly satisfying. The final assembly moves quickly. I mount the rear wheel and secure the drive chain sprocket. The black chain guard is bolted on, followed by the stunning tricolor striped fuel tank, the side covers, and the plush new leather seat. I carefully lift the fully rebuilt silver engine block and slide it precisely into the gloss black frame. Now begins the critical process of electrical routing. I snake the new wiring harness through the frame, plug in the vibrant amber turn signals, and mount the polished chrome headlight. We roll the finished masterpiece out into the sunlight. With a firm push on the Kickstarter, the engine immediately roars to life, settling into a smooth idle. I take out onto the street for a test ride. The bike runs flawlessly, officially reborn from a rusted relic into a functional work of art.